Good morning. It's a pleasure to be here. That's a question that's put me on the spot. Something about myself. I can't tolerate hot sunshine. Sitting in front of a fire, I get sunburnt. So with the weather like this outside, I've got no chance. But then again, inside here, actually, just thinking, how cold is it? I'd have no idea that it's high 90s outside. So, what exciting times we are in at the moment for our industry. I can't think of when our industry has been more exciting. The battles that are heating up between handset manufacturers and operating systems, and you know that the area that we're working in is becoming highly important and regarded when you start seeing it on the big screen with films. You have The Social Network, and there's a biopic about the life of Steve Jobs. And also, being a technology geek is cool at the moment. And I recently found out that there's such a thing exists as a Geek Pride Day. So today, I was asked to talk about what the trends, challenges, and opportunities are as I see it in the industry at the moment. So I was giving some thought to that, and the first thing that really kind of hit me was at conferences like this, almost the first thing you would hear people say is this going to be the year of mobile? And that happened probably through 2009, 2010, 2011, and then here we are in 2013, and actually, is this the year of mobile? That moment's past us, it's gone by, and nobody stood up and said, oh, this is the year of mobile, finally, I've got it right. We've gone past that, and dare I say, I regard mobile now as being mainstream, albeit still a small part of what we do, but it's mainstream. And I think more importantly than the fact that mobile is mainstream is the fact that mobile has actually changed our market research model. And just quickly going to say why I believe that is, and then move into what I'm seeing, some of the trends and some of the opportunities as being. So I think it's fairly widely accepted that market research began in the 1920s as an offshoot of the golden age of radio in the US. And advertisers began to realize the significance of demographics from that could be revealed from sponsoring different radio programs. And that's where market research began. And for 80 years, the model of market research was pretty much questions and answers. Until this came along, a little thing called the internet. And when the internet came along, yes, people realized that they could start doing surveys in a self-completion mode, and they could save some money. Saving money always helps to get something up and running off the ground. But what's really important, though, was when the internet came along in the 90s and the early noughties, was the fact that it changed the model. No longer was it question and answer, but actually, for the first time, you could now actually measure actual behaviors. And, okay, cookies here. People wanted to know how people were using the internet, and people were coming up with ways in which they could measure that actual online behavior. Now, so this was done in all manner of different ways. Cookies was just one of them. But it was controversial at the time when that happened, and actually a lot of traditional market researchers didn't like it. And I've actually got a quote from one of the leading market research organizations at the time, and it was that anything where a person's identity is used isn't market research, it's spying. We market researchers are always at risk of getting a bad name from people who mistake market research and data mining, which is about finding out enough about people to sell them something. While the data miners at that time were saying, what we need is not market research, it's more transactional data. It's well known that past behavior is the best predictor of future behavior. Attitudinal research is weak at best. Now, so that was back in late 90s, early 2000s. And here we are today, and we're all carrying these devices, these little computers that we're carrying in our pockets all the time. And it's happening all over again. Everyone wants to know, well, how are people using these devices? How are these influencing my path to purchase, or people finding out more about my brand, and so on. So The reason why I believe our market research model has changed again is because these devices that we're carrying around with us are full of so many sensors. They're almost human-like in that they can see, they can hear, they can, their location sensing is almost a bit like sniffing and smelling, that something may happen when you get to a certain place. So this has now brought us into what really is this real-time digital world where we're always connected and always on. Now, the unique capabilities of this device is absolutely transforming our industry, as all of us in this room are only too well aware. And our natural human curiosities has embraced these devices. We always want to know what our friends are doing, what our family are doing. We're only too eager to post updates about what we've been doing. And a lot of that has been good and some of it bad. And if you think about when you've had a big night out with friends, in the morning, you're probably not worried about the headache you've got. It's more the digital hangover of, oh my God, what was posted on Facebook last night? And, and some research that Diageo had done was that they found that 40% of 18 to 24-year-olds have actually asked their friends to remove something embarrassing that's been posted. And 65% claim that they judge others based on the photos and pictures and images that they've seen posted about them. So I'm sure many of us have been there and know what that feels like. But there's also, on the flip side, very positive things that come from this. So I don't know how many of you may have been following this story or have seen just this month it's emerged that President Mugabe of Zimbabwe has offered up a $300,000 reward if somebody can help unveil the person behind this persona called Baba Jokwa, who has been posting and leaking secrets about Mugabe's regime. And in just 4 months, he's been able to amass nearly 250,000 followers, and he's getting 1 million page views. And he's leaking stories about corruption in the party, government assassinations, talking about how up-and-coming elections are being rigged. And you only have to watch the news today to see stories that instead of having a news crew that goes out and films that story, you're getting amateur footage that people have recorded on their phones. So our hunger and desire for this real-time connectivity is really changing the way that we live our lives. And if you think about what was the first thing you did this morning? Was it take a shower, or was it pick up your phone and actually check your messages? Only, we're so worried in case something really big happened overnight that you've got to check your device. And some research that was conducted by Intercontinental showed that the biggest causes of stress is actually when we are without Wi-Fi access and you're not able to connect your devices. And I'm sure we've all got friends, or maybe even we're guilty of this ourselves, where you're in a social environment and you're busy checking the screen of your phone, and how annoying is that? Okay, so here's a couple on a date here, and I can't imagine that they'll be having a second date if he's glued to his screen of his phone all night. It's interesting to see how that's going to develop and what the behaviours are going to be going forward. Are the youth of today going to be taught any etiquette about how and when they use their device? Actually, in London, the first hospital and rehab treatment centre opened that treats people for being addicted to mobile devices and technology. And there were some quite interesting bits of information that came out of it. So on the left-hand side here is a lady called Dr. Ramala Khan. And she says that some people sleep only 1 or 2 hours a night, because they're so obsessed with being online and being on their device. And she says that some people have really cut themselves off from their real-life friends in favour for their online friends. And that many of the patients she actually sees have suffered relationship breakdowns because they insist on taking their tablets and smartphones to bed with them. And I was starting to think, who her typical type of client base would be. And actually, her typical client base are people probably not too dissimilar to you and I here today. They are people who are working in a pressured environment, carrying their device with them, keeping up to date with all their emails, and then at the same time wanting to keep up to date with their social lives. So she has some recommendations for people, saying that we really should try to avoid looking at our phone before breakfast and have tech-free break of 10 minutes every couple of hours through the day. So if that scares you a bit, you're not alone. I think the first thing I did this morning was check 2 phones, because one wasn't enough. And actually, there's some quite startling facts out there. So actually, 74% of people claim that they check their phone or emails the first thing they do before they start work in the morning. And 10% admit to using their phone at the dinner table. And 23% say that they feel uneasy or worried if they've not got their phone with them. And I'm guilty of that. I'll probably come out with a cold sweat if there's a vague thought that I've lost my device. And 45% of people admit to texting or emailing somebody who's in the next room to them so it means that they don't have to actually get up and go and see them. Okay, so bringing this back into a kind of market research context. Just a couple of years ago, a lot of what we were seeing, a lot of the case studies that we were seeing were very SMS-based. We're really using the phone in a very kind of basic way. And thankfully, today, we're not seeing that. And the challenges of how you work around 160 characters, the challenges of setting up mobile infrastructure in new countries and markets was challenging. So today, the majority of what we see, and I'm sure the majority of what we'll hear presented over the next couple of days, is very much web browser and app-based, and it's using the internet, using the connectivity that brings. Now, one of the biggest challenges that I believe we've really experienced over this past year has been what we call the chicken and egg scenario. So in order to do research, people are asking for access into sample and respondents. And if you want to deploy a new technology like mobile, then you need ways in which you can deploy that and access people. But then the panel and sample builders are not going to build new mobile panels unless there's a demand. So quite a large part of the last year, I'd say, has been going around in this chicken and egg scenario. But I'm really pleased that today I see so many exciting and innovative ways of being able to recruit sample through mobile. If we just call it dynamic ways of recruiting, whether that's through ad inventory, whether it's through paid-for content, however you do it, it's really is what's driving and managing to push us forward. And the availability of sample is what is going to really transform us from exploratory into mainstream. And where I've been witnessing and seeing some of those biggest opportunities is not necessarily here at home in North America or in Europe, and it's not even necessarily in brick markets, which the term brick was something you couldn't turn a page of a newspaper without reading that term. But actually it's in Africa and Asia where we're really seeing the biggest opportunities and the biggest changes. And there's a huge desire in those markets to get away from what are still quite antiquated research methodologies. In a lot of Africa, research today is still done pen and paper, interview administered. And mobile really enables them to very quickly get away from interviewer biases and to speed up timings, to reduce costs. And those are all the things that you need that will accelerate the take-up of any technology. A bit like how the take-up of internet and web was accelerated in the late 90s, early noughties from people taking up web-based research. Now, the other trend that I was going to move on to and touch upon was the fact that there's no real one-size-fits-all with mobile. And And it was interesting to hear the question after Janina spoke. The question was, did you use an app or did you use a browser-based? Now, that's, I think, is a challenge that many people have faced, a dilemma that people have asked themselves. And certainly our experience has shown us is that neither one of those will fit the market globally and will fit all situations. And it is a case of using whichever one is going to be most relevant in that market or for that task or for reaching that particular demographic group. In Africa, particularly, we've actually found that using the browser and straight into the web has really been the most successful way to get started. And that's because culturally, in some of those countries, there's been a resistance to downloading an app. And partly because maybe they've had their fingers burnt from apps that have tried to steal some personal information or has tried to defraud them out of money. And it requires people to have a great amount of trust before they download an app from that particular organisation or who they're dealing with. So we've really found that using the browser approach in markets like Africa has helped to accelerate. We've also found in some of those markets, though, is that, and I'm sure anybody who's doing surveys designed for the internet that can be optimised across devices will be using device detection software. And we found in a lot of these markets, actually, that devices are either so old or the way in which they're set up aren't even being picked up on device detection software. And that's standard industry level software. But with up to a third of devices not being recognised, either because they're so old or because they've got the settings set up as such, or they're using devices that are, fake or replica devices. So this kind of leads me on to an area where I suppose seeing opportunity, but also big challenges. And the consumer adoption of new technology always moves faster than the adoption within an industry like ours. And rightly so, our industry is built upon data and market norms. And in order to change your methodology, it has a great big impact on all that historical data and evidence that we've built up. But the truth of it is that consumer behaviour is changing rapidly. And we do have to keep up, otherwise we're going to get left behind. Not only as researchers and the relevance of researchers, but also in terms of our livelihoods, because there's always going to be the new technology and startup companies waiting to jump in and take an opportunity. And what do we see kind of on the horizon that's coming along next? Well, one of the things which is getting talked about a lot is wearable connected technology. So we've seen and heard Google talking a lot over the last couple of years about Google Glasses. We know that Apple are due to release their wearable iPhone watch. It's understood actually that that's been released, has been put back to next year. But I was reading just recently that Apple have actually hired a retired chief executive for fashion from Yves Saint Laurent, who just goes to show then that Apple are clearly looking at the importance of fashion, the importance of the luxury market, and how they can bring their technology into the fashion houses. Now, this brings along a whole new load of concerns and new challenges for us as a business. How do we adopt this kind of technology? There's going to be huge privacy concerns if somebody's wearing a device that may have cameras or is sniffing out for what's around them or recording. But this is going to be something that inevitably we are going to be tackling over the next 24 months. So, kind of summarising and wrapping up and what I've talked about today. So I'm really excited to see that the methodologies that we are using have really started to mature. We're seeing the demise of SMS as a market research methodology. It's still hugely important, of course, for messaging and sending alerts and keeping in touch with our consumers and respondents. But as a survey methodology, we're starting to see the adoption of apps and browser and more sophisticated tools. We're also going to see the adoption of more mixed mode research. If you want to do global market research, then you're going to have to accept the fact that you may have app mixed with browser. we're going to see a proliferation of diverse recruitment approaches around the world. What works to recruit somebody in, let's say, the US may be completely different to what's going to work to recruit, example, in Nigeria. The need to optimize and the challenges that that brings is only going to be exacerbated by new technology like this coming along. And further to that, we're going to see the rise of mobile methodology and technology, I see strongly over the course of this year in Africa and Asia, which will open up a lot more exciting opportunities. I believe that the BRIC markets will come very quickly, and especially given that we've got the Winter Olympics in Russia next year, and we've got the Football Soccer World Cup in Brazil next year, and the Olympics coming up 2016 in Brazil, that's really going to drive a lot of adoption in those markets. And our market research model is going to continue to evolve, and with the ability of being able to use the sensors in our devices more effectively, I do believe that that's going to change our market research forever. And thank you very much.